The morning sun cast long shadows across the training field at Camp Pendleton as Captain Jake Morrison adjusted his rifle scope. The familiar weight of the weapon felt good in his hands after 3 weeks of desk duty. He had been looking forward to getting back to field training with his Marines. "Target acquired 200 meters," Jake called out to his squad. The young soldiers around him moved into position with practiced ease. These men trusted him, and he had earned that trust through countless missions over the past 8 years. Jake was about to give the order to fire when something caught his eye. A strange shimmer appeared in the clear blue sky above them, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. But the morning air was cool, and there was no reason for such distortion. "Sir, are you seeing this?" Sergeant Bill Garcia pointed upward with his free hand. Jake lowered his rifle and squinted at the sky. The shimmer was growing larger, and now it looked more like a crack in the air itself. Through the crack, he could see what appeared to be stars, even though it was broad daylight. "Fall back to the base," Jake ordered. Something was very wrong, and his instincts told him to get his men to safety, but before they could move, the crack split wide open like a wound in the sky. Through it came something that made Jake's blood run cold. A massive shape emerged from the opening, blocking out the sun. It was unlike anything he had ever seen or imagined. The thing was huge, easily the size of a city block. Its surface looked like it was made of dark crystal that reflected light in impossible ways. Strange patterns moved across its surface, pulsing, with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. "What in the hell is that?" Garcia whispered. Jake had no answer. He grabbed his radio and tried to contact base command, but all he got was static. Around them, more cracks were appearing in the sky. More of the crystal ships were coming through. 50 miles away, Dr. Lisa Carter was having the worst day of her career. The quantum field readings on her computer screen made no sense at all. For the past hour, every instrument in the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory had been going crazy. "This can't be right," she muttered to herself, pushing her glasses up her nose. Lisa had been working on quantum physics for 12 years, and she had never seen anything like this. The energy readings were off the charts. It was as if space itself was being torn apart somewhere nearby. She ran the calculations again, but the numbers didn't change. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to affect the entire planet. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this." Her assistant, Dr. Pete Kim, rushed into her lab. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking as he held up his tablet. "What is it, Pete? Look outside now." Lisa followed him to the window and felt her knees go weak. Hanging in the sky above San Francisco was one of the crystal ships. It was so large that it cast a shadow over half the city. And it wasn't alone. She could see more ships in the distance, hovering over other cities. "My God," she whispered, "they're real." Pete nodded grimly. "The readings we've been getting all morning, they're not equipment failures. These things are generating massive quantum distortions just by being here." Lisa's mind raced. As a scientist, she was fascinated by the implications. As a human being, she was terrified. "Have they made contact? Any communication?" "That's the thing," Pete said. "They're not doing anything. They're just waiting." The answer came an hour later. Every television, radio, and electronic device on Earth simultaneously broadcast the same message. The voice was clearly artificial, but it spoke perfect English with no accent. "Your species has been selected for evaluation. Prepare for judgment." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. After that, the ships fell silent again. Jake had managed to get his squad back to base, but the situation there was chaos. Soldiers ran in every direction, trying to follow orders that changed every few minutes. Nobody knew what to do about the alien ships. "Morrison, get your gear." Colonel Dave Murphy grabbed Jake's shoulder. "We're moving out to secure the research facilities in Berkeley. If these things are hostile, we can't let them get our technology." Jake nodded and gathered his equipment. This was what he was trained for, even if the enemy was unlike anything in the manual. As he loaded his rifle, he couldn't shake the feeling that bullets would be useless against ships made of crystal and starlight. The drive to Barclay took 3 hours instead of the usual one. The highways were packed with people trying to flee the cities. Some cars had broken down completely, their electronics fried by the strange energy the ships were giving off when they finally reached the laboratory. Jake was surprised to find it still functioning. Most of the staff had evacuated, but a few scientists remained, working frantically at their computers. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge," Jake told the security guard at the entrance. "That would be Dr. Carter," the guard replied. "She's in Lab 7 down the hall." Jake found Dr. Carter hunched over a computer, her brown hair falling across her face as she studied the screen. She looked up when he entered, and he saw intelligent brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Are you here to evacuate us?" she asked. "I'm here to protect this facility," Jake replied. "Captain Jake Morrison, United States Marine Corps." Lisa stood up and extended her hand. "Dr. Lisa Carter." "I'm the lead quantum physicist here." Jake shook her hand, noting the firm grip. "What can you tell me about these ships, Doctor?" Lisa pulled up a complex diagram on her computer. "They're not entirely in our dimension. That's why our instruments are having trouble reading them. They exist partially in normal space and partially in quantum space." Jake stared at the diagram, understanding maybe half of what he was seeing. "In simple terms, what does that mean?" "It means they can do things that should be impossible. They can move without thrust, appear and disappear at will, and probably see through our defenses like they don't exist." "Great," Jake muttered. "Any idea what they want?" "Based on the energy patterns, I think they're scanning us. Learning about our technology, our biology, maybe even our thoughts." Jake felt a chill run down his spine, and then Lisa looked out the window at the massive ship hanging over the city. "Then they decide whether we live or die." Outside, the crystal ships continued their silent watch. Across the world, humanity held its breath and waited for judgment. The evaluation had begun, and nobody knew if they would pass the test. In the growing darkness, Jake and Lisa stood together at the window, two strangers brought together by impossible circumstances. Neither knew that their partnership would become the key to humanity's survival. For now, they could only watch and wait as the echoes of hope grew fainter with each passing hour. 3 months had passed since the crystal ships arrived, and the world was falling apart. Jake Morrison stood at the laboratory window, watching smoke rise from the city below. What had started as panic was now turning into something much worse. The power grid had failed 2 weeks ago in most areas. The alien ships were doing something that made electronics work badly or not at all. Cars stopped running, phones went dead, and even simple radios only worked sometimes. People were getting desperate. Another supply convoy was attacked yesterday. Jake told Dr. Lisa Carter as she worked at one of the few computers that still functioned. "The National Guard is losing control of the highways." Lisa looked up from her screen, her face tired. She had been working almost non-stop since the ships arrived, trying to understand what they were and what they wanted. "Any word from Washington?" "Nothing." "Good. The president is safe in the bunker, but most of the government has stopped functioning. Same story around the world." Lisa rubbed her eyes. The past 3 months had been the hardest of her life. She had watched her orderly world of scientific research crumble into chaos. But she had also learned things about the aliens that nobody else knew. "Jake, I need to show you something," she said, turning her computer screen toward him. "I've been tracking the energy patterns from the ships. Look at this." Jake studied the complex graph on the screen. He still didn't understand most of Lisa's scientific work, but he had learned to trust her judgment. "What am I looking at?" "The ships aren't just watching us, they're testing us. Every time there's a crisis, the energy patterns change. It's like they're recording our reactions. Testing us for what?" Lisa pointed to a series of spikes on the graph. "See these peaks? They happen every time humans do something violent. When people fight over food, when the riots start, when military units clash with civilians. The ships get more active." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "They're studying how we react to stress." "Exactly. And based on what I've seen, I don't think they like what they're learning about us. A loud crash from outside interrupted their conversation. Jake grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Below, a group of people were trying to break into a grocery store. The few police left in the city were outnumbered and falling back. I have to go help them, Jake said, checking his weapon. Wait, Lisa called after him. Take this. She handed him a small device that looked like a modified radio. I've been working on it for weeks. It should let us stay in contact even with all the interference. Jake clipped the device to his belt. Over the past 3 months, he had come to respect Lisa's brilliant mind. She could solve problems that seemed impossible, and she never gave up even when things looked hopeless. Be careful, she said, touching his arm briefly. Jake nodded and headed for the door. He had grown to care about Lisa more than he wanted to admit. She was nothing like the women he usually dated. She was quiet, serious, and lived in a world of numbers and theories. But she was also brave, loyal, and determined to save humanity. The streets were more dangerous than ever. Jake's military training served him well as he made his way through the chaos. He had learned to avoid the areas where the alien effects were strongest. In those places, time moved strangely, and gravity seemed to work differently. He reached the grocery store just as the situation was getting out of control. The crowd had grown larger, and some people were carrying weapons. Jake could see fear and desperation in their faces. These weren't criminals. They were ordinary people pushed to the breaking point. Everyone calm down, Jake called out, his voice carrying the authority of years of military command. There's enough food for everyone if we work together. Some people listened, but others were too angry and scared to hear reason. Jake spent the next hour helping to organize a fair distribution of supplies. His radio crackled with Lisa's voice. Several times, checking on his progress on his way back to the laboratory, Jake made a detour through one of the affected zones. Lisa had asked him to collect readings from areas where the alien effects were strongest. It was dangerous work, but the data was helping her understand how the ships worked. As he entered the zone, Jake immediately felt the strangeness. His watch stopped working, and the ground seemed to shift under his feet. In the distance, he could see one of the crystal ships hovering silently, its surface pulsing with that painful light. That's when he heard the crying. Following the sound, Jake found a group of children trapped in a collapsed school building. The strange effects had weakened the structure, and part of it had fallen in. The children were scared and hurt, but alive. Don't worry, Jake told them as he began moving debris. I'm going to get you out of here. It took him 2 hours to free all 6 children. His radio had stopped working completely in the zone, so he couldn't call for help. He had to rely on his own strength and determination. As he carried the last child to safety, Jake noticed something odd. The crystal ship above them had changed. Its pulsing light was different now, softer somehow. And for just a moment he could have sworn he saw something like a face in the shifting patterns on its surface. Back at the laboratory, Lisa was worried sick. Jake had been out of contact for hours, and her instruments were showing unusual activity from the ship above the city. When he finally walked through the door carrying an injured child, she felt relief wash over her. What happened out there? She asked as they got medical help for the children. I'm not sure, Jake replied, looking thoughtful. But I think one of the ships was watching me help those kids. And I think it approved. Lisa's eyes widened. That would explain the energy readings I was getting. Jake, I think you're right. They're not just studying our violence and fear, they're studying our compassion too. That night, as they worked together to analyze the data from Jake's mission, Lisa made a breakthrough. The alien ships weren't just observing human behavior. They were looking for something specific. They've done this before, she told Jake, pointing to patterns in the data. These energy signatures match theoretical models for civilizations that have been judged. And found wanting? Lisa nodded grimly. The mathematical models suggest they're looking for species that can survive extreme conditions, but not just survive. They want to see if we can maintain our humanity under pressure. Jake thought about the children he had saved, about the people He had helped at the grocery store. And if we can't? Then they move on to the next phase of their evaluation. Neither of them wanted to think about what that might mean. Over the following weeks, Jake and Lisa worked together more closely than ever. She would analyze the alien patterns and identify areas where the effects were strongest. He would venture into those dangerous zones to collect data and help any survivors they found. Their partnership was growing stronger with each mission. Jake had learned to understand Lisa's complex explanations, while she had come to appreciate his courage and tactical thinking. They were no longer just a soldier and a scientist thrown together by circumstance. They were becoming a team, but time was running out. The alien ships were becoming more active, and the effects on Earth were getting stronger. Lisa's calculations showed that whatever the aliens were planning, it would happen soon. As Jake stood watch outside the laboratory one night, he looked up at the crystal ship hovering overhead. Somewhere in that alien mind, humanity was being judged. And so far, Jake wasn't sure they were passing the test, but he and Lisa weren't giving up. They had each other now, and together they were going to find a way to save their world. The echoes of hope were growing fainter, but they weren't gone yet. The screaming started at dawn. Jake Morrison jerked awake in his makeshift bed in the laboratory's storage room. Through the window, he could see people running in the streets below, their faces twisted with terror. "Lisa, wake up," he called, shaking her shoulder gently. She had fallen asleep at her computer again, working through the night on her calculations. Lisa's eyes snapped open. "What's happening? Something's wrong. Look outside." They both rushed to the window. In the distance, where the downtown district used to be, there was nothing. Not destroyed buildings or rubble. Just empty space, as if that part of the city had never existed at all. "My God," Lisa whispered. "They're starting the cleansing." Jake grabbed his radio. "This is Captain Morrison. Does anyone copy?" Static filled the air for a moment, then a familiar voice came through. "Jake, this is General Kate Sullivan. Thank God you're alive." Jake felt relief wash over him. General Sullivan had been his commanding officer years ago, and he trusted her completely. "General, what's the situation?" "Bad and getting worse. The aliens have started something new. Whole sections of cities are just disappearing. No explosions, no debris. People and buildings just stop existing." Lisa was frantically typing at her computer, trying to make sense of the readings. "Jake, this is what I was afraid of. They're not destroying matter. They're erasing quantum signatures. It's like they're deleting reality itself." "Can you explain that in simple terms?" Jake asked. "They're making it so things never existed in the first place. No trace, no memory, nothing." Jake felt sick. "How many people?" "Millions," General Sullivan's voice came through the radio. "London, Tokyo, Moscow, all gone. But here's the strange part. Some areas are completely untouched. It's like they're being selective." Lisa suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "The energy readings." "Jake, we should be dead. That cleansing beam passed right over us an hour ago." Jake stared at her. "What do you mean?" "According to my instruments, a deletion wave swept through this entire area. But we're still here. We survived something that should have erased us from existence." Before Jake could respond, his radio crackled again. "All surviving military and scientific personnel, this is General Sullivan. We're forming a resistance network. If you can hear this, you're probably immune to their weapons. For some reason. We need to find out why." Over the next few days, Jake and Lisa discovered they weren't alone. Around the world, small groups of people had survived the cleansing beams. Most were military personnel or scientists, but some were ordinary civilians who had been in the right place at the right time. Lisa worked day and night to understand why some people were immune. "It has to do with exposure to the quantum distortions," she explained to Jake. "People who have been in the affected zones for long periods seem to develop a resistance, like a vaccination." "Exactly. Our quantum signatures have been altered by exposure to the alien technology. We're partially synchronized with their dimensional frequency," Jake's radio buzzed. "Morrison, this is Dr. Pete Kim. Are you receiving?" "Pete?" Lisa grabbed the radio. Where are you? South Korea. I'm with a group of survivors in Seoul. Lisa, I've made a discovery. The ships have weak points. Lisa's eyes lit up. What kind of weak points? They use dimensional anchors to stay in our reality. If we can disrupt the anchor frequency, we might be able to force them back to their own dimension. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. For the first time in months, they had something that might be hope. We need to get one of those anchors, Lisa said. If I can study it, I might be able to build a weapon. How do we capture alien technology from ships the size of cities? Jake asked. The same way we've been doing everything else. Together, General Sullivan's voice came through the radio again. All units, we've identified a target. There's a smaller ship about 50 miles north of San Francisco. It appears to be a scout vessel. If we're going to make a move, this is our chance. Jake felt his heart racing. This was what he was trained for, but the enemy was unlike anything he had ever faced. Lisa, if we do this, there's a good chance we won't come back. Lisa looked at him with determination in her eyes. Then we better make it count. The mission team was small. Jake led a group of 8 Marines, while Lisa brought her portable equipment to analyze any alien technology they could capture. The plan was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in practice. They had to get close to the ship, disable its defenses, and extract a dimensional anchor. The scout ship was hovering over a small town that had been completely abandoned. As they approached, Jake could see the effects of the alien presence. Time moved strangely in the area around the ship. His watch would speed up, then slow down, then run backwards. Stay close to me, Lisa warned the team. I can predict temporal distortions, but only if we stay together. They moved through the town like ghosts, avoiding the worst of the time effects. Buildings flickered in and out of existence around them. Jake saw a church that appeared to be both new and ancient at the same time. This is like walking through a nightmare, one of the Marines whispered. Keep focused, Jake replied. We have a job to do. When they reached the ship, Jake was amazed by its size. Even the scout vessel was larger than a football stadium. Its crystal surface pulsed with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Lisa studied her instruments. The anchor is there, she pointed to a section of the ship that seemed to flicker between dimensions. But the temporal distortion is strongest around it. We'll be walking into a maze where minutes can become hours. Jake made the decision that would change everything. Then we go in fast and hard. No hesitation. The assault on the ship was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. They fought through corridors where the walls changed color and shape, where gravity shifted without warning, where their own reflections sometimes moved independently. 3 Marines were lost to temporal loops, trapped in moments that repeated forever. 2 more simply vanished when they stepped into areas where time moved backwards. But Jake and Lisa pressed on, driven by desperation and the knowledge that humanity's survival might depend on their success. They found the dimensional anchor in a chamber that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Lisa worked frantically to disconnect it while Jake held off the ship's defenses. The alien technology fought back, sending waves of energy that tried to erase them from existence. Almost got it, Lisa called out, her hands flying over her equipment. Work faster, Jake shouted back. I don't know how much longer I can hold them off. Finally, with a sound like reality tearing, the anchor came free. The ship immediately began to flicker, its hold on normal space weakening. Run, Lisa yelled, grabbing the anchor. They raced through the collapsing ship as it phased in and out of existence. Jake pulled Lisa along when the temporal effects tried to trap her in slow motion. She guided him around areas where space itself was folding. They escaped just as the ship vanished completely, taking its alien crew back to whatever dimension they came from. Back at the laboratory, Lisa studied the captured anchor with wonder and terror. Jake, this technology is incredible. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Can you use it to build a weapon? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Maybe, but Jake, if I'm right about how this works, using it would be incredibly dangerous. We might be able to disrupt all the ships at once, but what? But whoever activates the device probably won't survive the process. Jake looked at the alien artifact glowing on the table. Humanity's fate might depend on this strange technology and the brilliant woman who was trying to understand it. He had come to care about Lisa more than he had ever cared about anyone, and now she was talking about a suicide mission. "There has to be another way," he said. Lisa met his eyes. "I hope so, Jake. I really hope so." Outside, the crystal ships continued their silent watch. But now, for the first time since they arrived, humanity had a weapon that might be able to fight back. The question was whether they would have the courage to use it. The countdown had begun. Lisa Carter stared at her computer screen as the numbers rolled backward. 72 hours until the aliens finished their preparations for something they called the final protocol. Any luck with the weapon? Jake. Morrison asked, entering the laboratory with 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee was hard to find these days, but he had traded his watch for it. Lisa needed to stay alert. "It's not working the way I hoped," Lisa said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The dimensional anchor is more complex than I thought. Every time I think I understand it, it does something new." Jake sat down beside her. Over the past weeks, they had grown closer than either had expected. In the middle of humanity's darkest hour, they had found something worth fighting for in each other. "Tell me what you've learned," Jake said. Lisa pulled up her analysis on the screen. "The anchor doesn't just keep the ships in our dimension, it's also a communication device. When I activated it yesterday, something happened. I think I made contact with the aliens?" Jake nearly spilled his coffee. "You talked to them?" "Not exactly talked, it was more like sharing thoughts. For just a moment, I could sense what they were thinking." "And what were they thinking?" Lisa's face was pale. "They're not what we thought they were, Jake. They're not conquerors. They're refugees." Before Jake could ask what she meant, his radio crackled to life. "All units, this is General Sullivan. The final assault begins in 6 hours. Everyone needs to be in position." Jake picked up the radio. "General, this is Morrison. Dr. Carter has made contact with the aliens. We might not need to fight them. Explain." Lisa took the radio from Jake. "General, I've learned to use their communication system. The aliens aren't trying to destroy us. They're running from something and they need our help." There was a long pause. "Dr. Carter, we've lost over half the planet in the last week. If they need help, they have a strange way of asking for it. Please, just give me more time. I think I can establish better communication. You have until the assault begins. After that, we use every weapon we have." Lisa immediately went back to work on the alien device. Jake watched her fingers fly over the controls she had built to interface with the anchor. She was brilliant, but she was also exhausted. She had been working for days with almost no sleep. "Lisa, you need to rest." "I can't. This is too important." She paused and looked at him. "Jake, if this works, if I can really talk to them, everything changes. And if it doesn't work? Then you lead the assault without me." Jake felt his heart. "Skip a beat. What do you mean?" "The communication link requires someone to maintain it from this end. If the connection breaks, we lose our chance to understand each other." "You're talking about staying behind while we attack?" Lisa nodded. "It's the only way." Jake was about to argue when the laboratory filled with light. The dimensional anchor was activating on its own, its crystal surface blazing with energy. Lisa quickly sat down at her controls. "It's happening," she said. "They're trying to make contact." Jake watched as Lisa's body went rigid. Her eyes rolled back and strange patterns of light played across her skin. For a terrifying moment, he thought she was being attacked. Then her eyes snapped open, but they weren't her normal brown color. They were shifting like the surface of the alien ships. "Jake," Lisa's voice was different, layered with harmonics that didn't sound human. "I can see them. I can see everything. Lisa, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm connected to their collective consciousness." "Jake, they're dying. Their whole civilization is being destroyed by something they call the Void Storm." Jake felt confused. "What's a void storm?" "It's a wave of nothingness that consumes entire dimensions. It's already destroyed countless worlds and it's heading for their home dimension." They've been searching for species that can survive in multiple dimensions at once, and they found us? Lisa's strange eyes focused on him. Humans have a unique quantum signature. We exist partially in several dimensions without realizing it. That's why some of us are immune to their weapons. We're naturally resistant to dimensional effects. Jake was starting to understand. They don't want to destroy us. They want to save us, yes, but there's a problem. Not all of them agree with this plan. There's a faction called the Prime Resonance that believes humans are too violent and chaotic to be trusted with dimensional technology. And they're the ones erasing our cities? They're testing us. Every time humans respond to crisis with violence, the Prime Resonance grows stronger. But every time we show compassion and cooperation, the other faction gains support. Jake thought about all the times he had helped people instead of just following orders. The children I saved, the people at the store, they were watching all of it. Every act of kindness, every moment of courage, every time you chose to help. Instead of hurt, it all matters. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the building. Jake's radio burst with static and panicked voices. All units, the ships are moving. They're beginning the final protocol. Through the window, Jake could see the massive crystal ship above the city starting to pulse with a different kind of light. This wasn't the soft glow they had grown used to. This was harsh and angry. Lisa, what's happening? The Prime Resonance has won the debate. They're going to erase Earth completely and start over with a species they consider more worthy. Jake felt rage building inside him. After everything they had been through, after all the people who had died, the aliens were going to destroy them anyway. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less. Jake grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. Then we go with the original plan. We hit them with everything we've got. Wait, Lisa called after him. There might be another way. If I can maintain the communication link while you lead the assault, I might be able to reach the moderate faction. Show them that humans can work together when it matters most. That's too dangerous. If something happens to you. Lisa stood up, and Jake could see determination in her alien-touched eyes. Jake, this is our only chance. You have to trust me. Jake looked at the woman who had become the most important person in his life. She was asking him to leave her behind, to let her risk everything while he went into battle. I trust you, he said finally. But I'm coming back for you. I know you will. Jake kissed her quickly, then ran toward the exit. Behind him, Lisa was already working to reestablish the communication link. The fate of both species now depended on a Marine captain who had learned to think beyond warfare and a quantum physicist who had learned to bridge the gap between worlds. As Jake reached his strike team, he could hear Lisa's voice echoing strangely through the building. She was speaking in harmonics that no human throat should be able to produce, trying to convince an alien collective that humanity was worth saving. All right, Marines, Jake called to his team. We've got one shot at this. Let's make it count. Above them, the crystal ships began to descend, their surfaces blazing with the light of final judgment. But Jake Morrison had learned something important over the past months. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from defeating your enemies, but from proving that they didn't have to be enemies at all. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and it would be fought with both weapons and words, violence and compassion, in a desperate gambit to save two species from destruction. The world split in two. Jake Morrison found himself fighting in both dimensions at once as his strike team assaulted the main alien installation in Nevada. Reality twisted around them like a broken mirror, showing fragments of Earth and glimpses of the dying Cathara dimension. Through his radio, he could hear Lisa's voice speaking in those strange harmonics as she maintained the communication link. She was arguing with the alien collective, trying to convince them that humanity deserved a chance. Jake, can you hear me? Lisa's normal voice cut through the static. I'm here, he replied, ducking as a wave of energy passed overhead. But we're not making much progress. Their defenses are too strong. Listen carefully. I'm connected to both factions now. The Prime Resonance is showing me visions of their home dimension. Jake, it's dying. Everything is being consumed by this void storm. Jake looked around at his Marines. Half of them were fighting enemies they couldn't see in spaces that shouldn't exist. What do you need me to do? The Prime Resonance thinks. Humans are too violent to survive what's coming. You have to show them they're wrong. Show them what humanity really is. How do I do that? The same way you always have. Help someone who needs it. Through the chaos of battle, Jake saw movement. In the ruins of a nearby building, a group of civilians had been trapped there when the final assault began. They were caught between the human forces and the alien defenses, with nowhere to run. Cover me, Jake called to his team. I'm going after those civilians. Sir, that's suicide, Sergeant Garcia protested. The alien fire is too heavy. Then, we better make sure they don't get hit. Jake ran toward the building as his Marines laid down covering fire. The alien weapons were unlike anything he had faced before. They didn't just destroy matter. They tried to erase the very idea that matter had ever existed, but Jake had learned something over the past months. Every time he chose to help instead of hurt, every time he showed compassion instead of just following orders, he became a little bit stronger. The alien weapons had less power over him. He reached the building and found 12 people trapped in the basement. They were scared, hurt, and had given up hope of rescue. I'm Captain Morrison, he told them. I'm getting you out of here. It's too dangerous, an old man said. We'll never make it. Yes, we will, but we have to work together. Jake organized the group, using his military training to keep them calm and focused. He had the stronger people help the weaker ones. He made sure everyone had a job to do. Most importantly, he never let them give up hope as they moved through the battle zone. Jake felt something strange happening. The alien attacks were becoming less focused. Through his radio, he could hear Lisa's voice growing stronger. It's working, Jake. The moderate faction is gaining support. They can see what you're doing. The journey to safety should have been impossible. The ground kept shifting under their feet. Gravity worked in different directions. Time moved backward and forward randomly. But Jake kept the group together through sheer force of will and determination. When they finally reached the safe zone, Jake realized that something fundamental had changed. The alien ships above them were no longer pulsing with that angry light. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. Jake, Lisa's voice came through the radio, and now it sounded completely normal. The Prime Resonance wants to speak with you directly? Me? Why? Because you proved their theory wrong. Come back to the lab, quickly. Jake left his team in the capable hands of Sergeant Garcia and raced back to the laboratory. He found Lisa sitting at her controls, but she looked different. Her eyes were normal again, but there was a new understanding in them. The communication link is stable now, she said. Both factions want to hear what humanity has to say. Jake sat down beside her. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth. Jake took a deep breath and spoke into the alien communication device. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a soldier, but I'm also a human being. I've seen the worst that my species can do, but I've also seen the best. The response came not in words, but in shared thoughts and emotions. Jake could feel the alien consciousness touching his mind, examining his memories and motivations. You are violent, the Prime Resonance observed. Yes, Jake admitted. But we're also capable of great kindness. We protect the weak. We sacrifice for others. We never give up hope, even when everything seems lost. Your species is chaotic and unpredictable. That's exactly why you need us. You've become too ordered, too rigid in your thinking. The void storm is consuming your dimension because you can't adapt fast enough, but humans excel at adapting. We turn chaos into strength. Jake felt the alien collective considering his words. Through the link, he could sense their fear and desperation. They had watched their entire civilization crumble, and they were running out of time. We have lost so much, the moderate faction whispered. Entire worlds, countless lives. Then, don't lose any more, Jake said firmly. Work with us. Teach us about dimensional travel, and we'll help you find new homes. Our universe is big enough for both our species. Lisa squeezed his hand. Through the communication link, she was sharing her own memories and knowledge. She showed the aliens human science, human art, human dreams of exploring the stars. We can build something new together, Lisa added. A partnership between species. You have the technology and we have the adaptability. The debate within the alien collective continued for what felt like hours. Jake and Lisa could feel the tide slowly turning as more of the Cathara began to support the alliance. Finally, the Prime Resonance spoke again. You have shown us something unexpected. Your species fights not just for survival, but for the survival of others. This is ... admirable. Does that mean you'll work with us? Jake asked. We will try. But this partnership must be built slowly, with great care. Both our species have much to learn. The crystal ships above Earth began to change. Their harsh light softened, and their threatening formations spread out into a more peaceful arrangement. The energy barriers around the planet didn't disappear, but they became permeable, allowing controlled contact. 6 months later, Jake stood with Lisa on the observation deck of the first joint human Cathara research station. Through the transparent walls, they could see Earth below and the gentle glow of the dimensional gates that the aliens had built in orbit. It's working better than I ever hoped, Lisa said, reviewing reports from the scientific exchange program. Their knowledge of dimensional physics combined with our adaptability is producing incredible results. Jake nodded, watching a group of human volunteers prepare for the first mission to rescue survivors from other dimensions threatened by the Void Storm. Who would have thought that our greatest enemies would become our greatest allies? We're not allies yet, Lisa corrected gently. We're still learning to trust each other, but we're making progress. Jake put his arm around her. Their relationship had grown stronger through the trials they had faced together. They had learned that the best partnerships weren't just about love, but about bringing out the best in each other. What's our next mission? He asked. Lisa smiled and pointed to a display showing dimensional readings from a distant galaxy. There's a species called the Zephyrians. They're facing the same threat we were. The Cathara want to know if humans are ready to help save another world. Jake looked at the data, then at the woman who had become his partner in every sense of the word. They had started as strangers thrown together by impossible circumstances. Now they were part of something much larger than themselves. I think we're ready, he said as they prepared for their next adventure. Jake thought about how much had changed. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. Humanity had found its place not as conquerors but as protectors and partners. And in the darkest hour when all hope seemed lost, two very different people had found a way to bridge the gap between worlds. The echoes of hope had become a symphony of possibility, reaching across dimensions to touch the lives of countless beings, who no longer had to face the darkness alone.